Welcome to another episode of Roll or Die. We are on a mission to bring you all of the female Australian black belts in our wide land, and we are also trying to bring you the New Zealand Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu female black belts, and of which we have today a very special guest. I've known her since we were both blue belts together. I think we met at the Pan Packs when we competed as blue belts against each other. And I think the last time we met in person was at the Bia Mosquita and Letitia Ribeiro camp in New Zealand, in Wellington in 2019, which was fantastic. She is a first-degree black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. She is the co-owner of Workshop BJJ in Wellington with her husband, and she is Amy Barratt-Boyes. Thanks for joining us, Amy.
Hey, yeah, it's fun to be here. Thanks for having me. Great to get some kind of cross-Tasman Jiu-Jitsu talk going.
Absolutely. And I'm here with two Kiwis.
I'm all for that too. Yeah, how good's this? Like, we're finally outnumbering them, right?
Some insight.
Yeah, and you're from, are you from Wellington? Is that where you sort of grew up?
Yeah, pretty much. My parents, I spent like the first 5 years of my life in Samoa. My parents were doing some volunteer stuff, but all the things I remember properly is Wellington based, which is great. It's a tiny little city, so I think I know everybody.
It's interesting because it's the capital.
Yeah,
it's about the size of Ballarat or something like that. It's quite.
I'm just going to nod and assume that that's not a big diss, but yeah.
But it's yeah,
it is small, but it's
the same as Canberra, though, Kim.
Oh yeah, true. That's
but we've got lots of hills, so we're kind of held in by the harbour and the hills, and I think that means that everybody has to deal with each other. Like, we're right in each other's faces a lot, and I think that really helps for a cohesive city, which Wellington feels like for sure.
Yeah. No, it was very nice.
I did my chef's apprenticeship down in Wellington, and even like to this day, I still actually think on a nice day, Wellington is the nicest city I've ever been in. It's just that you only get like 14 nice days a year, you know?
Yeah, you got like one, and it was like, this is amazing. We just had ours yesterday, actually, so that's it for a little while. But it was really good. Yeah, people were out for sure.
No, it's a beautiful place. I love Wellington. So how did you get into jiu-jitsu? You've been doing it for a long time now, Amy, right?
Yeah, like 14 and a half, 14 years now. So quite a long time. I've got 5 kids. The first 3 are like 28, 26, 24. And I took them along to the gym. I was teaching yoga at a gym, and they had Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu classes. And so I went along to the kids' classes, and I was just sort of twitching on the sideline. This looks great. And the coach let me get on, and I choked a couple of kids. And then I was like, I am hooked. Sign me up. It's the best thing that's ever happened. And so that was then, after that, it was just like, I think some people, you're just instantly addicted. And I was instantly got. I think that's that proximity with people, the fact you're allowed to try really hard. It's not embarrassing to try hard. There's no pretense. You can't sort of, there's no space for worrying what you look like, or funny noises that you're making, or being sweaty, and all of that was very refreshing.
Do those kids still train?
Unfortunately not. I think that they kind of think maybe jiu-jitsu stole their mum, just like a tiny bit. But the youngest 2, who are 9 and 5, Ernest and Maud, they're training here at Workshop. And we've got a kids program that I run that is a great time, and they really love it. So fingers crossed that they keep loving.
So we've had actually quite similar journeys, Amy. I didn't start with a kids class, but I started, I think, look, we can come out and say it. We're a similar age. I'm about to turn 50. I think you've not long ago turned 50. So, so it's, it isn't, to me, it didn't seem that big a deal, but I think now, because jiu-jitsu has just exploded in popularity, so many people are so much younger. Did you struggle at all starting as a female in your mid-30s? Did you find that challenging?
No,
I
she
actually,
stayed in the kids class for 5 years.
that's right. I just wasted the kid until I worked out that mental game that then you can kind of temper other people, and then I was away. No, I think I was pretty lucky. I was like in pretty good shape doing all the yoga and stuff, and I have never had I had like one injury that's been a bit of an issue, but luckily kind of sailed through without too many bad injuries and things. But now I am noticing it. So at 50, I'm definitely choosing my training partners more. So I won't just throw myself at the huge new white belt guys anymore. And I kind of top out at about 110 kgs. That's about as heavy as I want to go to roll with. Like there's not going to be much in it for us and more than that difference. And I'm letting go of positions a lot more than I would have earlier. So there's lots of things you can easily compromise your knees and your shoulders and your neck by insisting on things, and I don't insist on those things anymore. So I probably get my guard passed a little bit more than I used to, and a few other things, but that's much better. It means I'm on the mat still
For sure.
training.
Tell us a little bit about your journey. So how long were you a white belt? How long were you a blue belt? Were you competing through these times?
Yeah, I started competing like straight away because I am quite competitive. And I really enjoyed it, and I had, a reasonable amount of success. I still have never competed in a masters division, so I've always just been adult, probably the same, or maybe like only in the last year or so, right? Because there hasn't been anyone to compete with.
That's exactly right. Yeah, like people think it's crazy that I was still doing adult at like 45 years old, but that was the only way I could compete because there were no other women. The only
100%.
ones were there. So
yeah,
for sure.
100%. But there's nothing sweeter than the tears of a 20-year-old. Do you find that? There's nothing. It's like
the mental game is stronger for the older masters, that's for sure.
Where like they cry a little bit, and I get like just like 5 years younger for a little bit, like my skin plumps out, stand a little taller. Oh, so bad. Anyway, so I think I graded, reasonably, not slowly, especially at the start, like just over a year to blue belt and blah blah blah. And certainly that would be hard for us at workshop because we're primarily attendance-based grading because we really rate our training and it's all live. We can't get people to blue belt standard in like it's 400 hours. Then there's something wrong with us, not something wrong with the student, right? But luckily I wasn't grading under that system. And so I just skipped up quite quickly. I think considering I had 2 kids in that time too, I think getting to black belt in like 9 years with 2 kids on the way wasn't too bad in the middle.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
And they were, I think that was a pretty lucky journey. No injuries. And the kids I was still training, I trained up until like 2 days before I had Ernest and like a week before I had Maud. And only really stopped because I was grossing everybody else out. Like people were tapping to guillotines and I was like, this was what? And they're like, we can feel the baby kicking. Okay.
Yeah. Amy was amazing when we went to the camp in New Zealand. Her baby was only less than a year old, I think.
Yeah,
your youngest was a few months old. And so Amy had her, by the side of the mat. She'd have to duck off every now and then to breastfeed and then come back. And it's amazing to see women doing that.
Yeah, and now we're getting a lot more of it, which is so good, isn't it? And some really top competitors being really open about their journey through motherhood and still training and competing. And it's really good.
Yeah. What can you tell us about?
The journey through motherhood's changed though, right? Like people are more open. It's not, look, I'm a man, so I know nothing about this stuff, right?
Yeah, come on, Brent, bring it.
It's not but it's not like the beautiful journey every step of the way.
Oh, yeah.
Like people are more open about, what pregnancy's like and what having a baby's like. So now for you guys, and I know this with a few people where Rachel, who's one of the legends who trains with us, like her baby will be beside the mat and, like they're just juggling these sorts of things all the time. So it's not a oh, you've had a baby, you need to stay away. It's in a lot of cases, in a lot of gyms, it's so acceptable. Hey, you bring your baby. If you need to run off the mat, run off the mat. Like that's perfect. Like that's an amazing jiu-jitsu gym when you can do that.
Yeah. I think they should all be, and I think we're seeing more and more of it. I mean, like, Kim, you'll know too. Like the chances back when we started, there might have been 2 or 3 women in a gym usually. Maybe a few more patches if you were lucky, of gyms with a few more women, and certainly very few female-owned gyms, women-owned gyms. Like that was a real rarity. Whereas now we're like, there's quite a few in New Zealand that I can think of that are run by women, or at least women in partnership with their partners, sharing the kind of coaching and everything equally. And I think that just makes such a big difference, having people that are just going to really advocate for you right from the start for all of those issues, of whether it's like bringing kids, whether it's like acknowledging that, there's lots of like menstrual products in the bathrooms, and it's okay if you're not feeling good or something happens on the mats. Like, sure, have a cry on the mats. I'm about it. I've done it lots of times too. Just really making sure that there aren't those barriers there, and you're not made to feel kind of a bit stink or dumb because you're a woman and not fitting into the male kind of stereotype on the mats. It's really, really important. And it's still not there. Like, we're trying to get to 50% men and women on our mats, and I think we're sitting at about 30% at the moment.
That's
huge.
amazing.
That's huge.
But it's still only 30%, like, it's still getting there. And we've tried all sorts of things. We've tried cheaper fees for women, so we kind of bring that in and out as we see how it is. All of our language is really female strong, so we play Queen of the Hill at workshop. We don't play King of the Hill. Sounds silly, but like, it's actually all really good. And it also just helps some of our really competitive, like strong young men. We're really strict on the music and things that are happening, the language that's happening at workshop. I don't want to hear any kind of slurs that are going to make people feel like they don't belong or that they're not welcome. And because we're so strict on it, but we like our students, like, it's the language or the behaviour that's a problem if we need to talk to them. I think we've got this really great kind of welcoming place where people know there are real boundaries, and we're really seeing that there's lots of great interaction between people, and it feels like a good safe space. So hopefully we can maintain that. So it feels pretty precious at the moment.
Wow, 50% women. That's amazing. Like,
No,
I don't know that I know that.
We're only at about 30 at the moment, but yeah.
Because I don't know. I feel like I've trained at a couple of gyms now, and even to have like 20% of the class as females is amazing.
Yeah.
Like, I'm always really excited when I'm like, wow, look, there's like 8 women in the class. If the class is like 40 plus, I'm like, look, there's 8 of us. And
that's members. So that doesn't necessarily mean that on
per
the
class. At the same time. Yes. And that is something I do find as a woman that sometimes quite frustrating, because people say, oh, you're at such and such gym, you've got a heap of women. And I'm like, yeah, we do, but it's usually only me and 1 or 2 others on the mat at the same time. We can never seem to schedule it to all get together, even though we have all these group chats going, like, who's coming to training tonight? Ends up being like you and maybe 1 other person. So
it's hard.
It is very hard to coordinate sometimes.
Yeah, it's great when you do have like a couple of people who are really proactive in that, keeping people on, though, like with the group chats or whatever. That certainly helps. But that's something that we're really.
I'm one of those people. Everyone knows me as being like, hey, haven't seen you for a while. Where are you? Come and train. What's up? You're injured? Let's partner. It's fine. I'm good. I'll be a partner. Come on. They don't get out of it that easy with me.
Yeah. I send out the "Are you alive?" emails. Like, are you alive? And then we see people come back. It's just,
I think it's important. I think people, need to have that sense of community, and sometimes life can get busy. I appreciate that, but it's usually in most jiu-jitsu gyms there's enough classes that they can hopefully find a way to get to at least a couple a week, so that they can come back in, and usually it just takes 1 or 2 classes from coming back, and then they kind of get back into the swing of things.
Totally. Their skin doesn't get so bruised anymore, and then they're back. Yeah.
And knowing that you've been thought of, like someone shooting you a text, go, hey, I haven't seen you for a little bit,
Yeah.
or anything like that. It's such a nice feeling as well, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, totally.
So
And it just reinforces that it's a community. It's like we feel like we
yeah,
provide people their kind of third space outside work and home.
Yeah.
yeah,
And if you don't have things that extend out beyond the mat, then that's not really kind of what you're doing. Like, so, yeah, we count that as an important part. I think one other thing about growing up female membership is also that because we don't teach techniques and we don't drill and we never have at workshop, so it means that women who often might be presented with a technique that really is not going to be that great for our bodies most of the time when we're training with the big wide training partners that we have to train with at the gym. Like there might be very unrealistic things, or where it relies a lot on upper body strength, which often women aren't strong through the upper body, not always, as some of the men. So because we've been teaching ecologically for so long, I think everybody's allowed to do things, in fact encouraged, it's the only option, the way that their bodies can do it. And so I think that real frustration of I can't do jiu-jitsu, I can't do it, tell me where I put my hand, tell me how, that's all taken away. And I think it's pretty interesting watching people really start to own their jiu-jitsu. Like after maybe 3 or 4 classes, they are like owning what they're doing, and being tricky to roll with. It's like it's great. It's been a really positive thing. Yeah.
Tell us a bit more about that, Amy. Like, so what do you mean?
yeah.
You don't run a class in the traditional way of like,
Yeah,
okay, let's everybody circle up. This is the technique. We're going to do ABC.
So we have so Pat is a massive, massive nerd. I'm a jiu-jitsu nerd, but I'm jiu-jitsu nerd, and then Pat is jiu-jitsu nerd. Okay, so he's like, and he got on maybe about 5 years ago. He was like, doing some reading, and it's like, I really think that there are better ways to teach what we're doing. And I have for a long time struggled with going to class because I'm really bendy. I'm not that strong. I'm old. I'm probably not going to be able to do very effectively whatever's being shown. And I just want to do my own kind of weird thing that works for me. And so I was quite receptive to the idea, but still didn't really believe. And then he was like, we're just going to try just teaching through games with really set constraints. And so that's what he started doing, and then I started doing it, and then now all the classes, right from the start at workshop, that's how we teach. And it's just meant so we don't have any warm-up. We get on the mats, there'll be a game that'll be a lower intensity game, but jiu-jitsu, and then everything is just a series of games. You'll be told, like, often given some grips to start, or some sort of position to start, or you might say, you're supine versus standing, and you're playing an underneath guard. So, like, if we take all the kind of funny words out of that, maybe you're playing like an X guard or a single leg X or anything that is underneath and in between the person. And then the person on top will be given a goal, and the person on the bottom will be given a goal, and then you go to and sort of have at it for like maybe 6 minutes, swapping and sharing that time as you like. And then we might give people a bit more information, or we might not, depending on what the class needs. We might trim the game. And so that's how the classes will go. We try to cover like a full kind of like realm of jiu-jitsu in that one class. So we'll try to do stand-up. There's always stand-up in every class. We'll do some sort of guard play, and we'll do some sort of pinning, and there'll be submissions maybe in there as well. And we've just found it to be, I was just fantastic. Like I was quite skeptical of it for beginners, because in my head I was still like, well, they need to know this and this and this and this and what's this, and but actually beginners, especially if they haven't done jiu-jitsu anywhere else, have this incredibly accelerated learning curve. Their expectations aren't that they're going to be walked through things, so they're really receptive to the games. They'll just try really hard. It really shows you if your game is a bit bullshit, because you'll get them like kind of running around like Catherine reels if you tell them to try and get past the legs, and like just doing, which is great as a coach, because I get to like learn how to make the games better. But also because they're not questioning themselves all the time, their uptake's so much faster. They're so much more fun to roll with right from the start. Because the class is alive, we don't get the thing where the first time they roll, it's the world champs, because they've already been competing or like interacting in a live fashion all the way through class. So yeah, it's been really good. I can't overstate how great it is. And in fact, it's the students that we get that come in from other gyms, maybe at purple belt, blue or purple belt, who are like, so tell me what to do. So I need to know, like, so where should I put my foot for this? And we're just like, well, what's the problem? Is it because they're sitting on you? Do you want to make space? Are you trying to bring them towards you? So that's been really interesting because I would have thought it would be a more advanced students, sort of to their benefit to learn like this. But actually, we've really noticed that it's easier with beginners because they're not bringing their baggage with them.
That sounds like a lot of fun, right? And I know, so my profession is as a dog trainer, and I know that.
Yeah.
So teaching dogs through play is such a vital ingredient to success. It builds confidence and all those sorts of things. Yes, you could do a whole bunch of luring technique and guiding techniques and all shaping techniques and all those sorts of things. But if you're starting to teach them through play with very, very little rules and constraints, often then that, grows into a dog being more confident and then figuring rules out as we go. And then as they learn to love the game, then we can put more rules and constraints around it, right? And that's more or less what you're doing. You're like, these are the games we play. And then as they get better, now we're like, hey, just so you know, you can't do X, Y, Z, you know? So,
as far as, so for competition, which is our main thing. So we have safety, like you wouldn't be trying to break, obviously, trying to get people to kind of roll over people's necks or things like that. But for competition, we have like a real competition focused class. We call it long games. And it is basically just Queen of the Hill with really gnarly situations all the way through, but depending on what competition's coming up. In New Zealand, we have like one IBJJF competition and the rest are the JJF, the Sports Federation Jiu Jitsu.
So Australia, we've only got one IBJJF as well.
Yeah, it's
anyone in the IBJJF listening? What's going on? What about us down here?
Yeah. So anyway. And then the rest are like kind of round robin comps, which actually I think are good, but with really loose rule sets. So we just try and tailor the games to represent the rule sets in those competitions, but otherwise we really don't have a lot of focus on like what's appropriate at different levels. Any of those kind of things isn't really something we're really highly focusing on.
Grappling industries in New Zealand? Grappling industry
comps? They were, I think, but they're not now. They might have done one. Yeah, so we've got Stealth. We've got a few independent people who run like one in their local area. And then we've got NZ Grappler, which is our biggest kind of, they're the most organised for us. They do the most competitions.
Yeah.
That's pretty much it.
Yeah. So that's why some of you guys have to come over to here to compete.
Yeah, which has always been the case, but it's still like now it's got so expensive. Like Pat and I were looking, like we used to come over like maybe 4 or 5 times a year and compete. It was so much fun. But it was costing us like $250 return, whereas now it's like $800.
Yeah.
It's money.
You're nodding with Brent. You know about the flight costs in New Zealand.
Yeah. I think the dog training analogy.
So many things are.
Thinking about that. Yeah.
What was that, Amy?
I said I think the dog training analogy is really good. Like I think just that thing of having enough stress that people have to pay attention, but not too much stress that they can't fulfill the goals, or they can't get themselves to actually perform the task. I think getting that balance is really important. But it is really hard. So when I was teaching in a more traditional way, I sort of had an idea of what I wanted everybody to learn, like maybe over a year. And then I would try and pick out sort of techniques and ideas and things, and then I would teach those. And actually, I didn't really have to think about the classes very much because I could just go and walk people through techniques, and then we'd do a little bit of live stuff, and then that was fine. But now I have to really examine what it is that I want, what the problem is I want people to solve, and it's quite different to what you think. Like the kind of the expert kind of what's the word I want? Blindness with some of these techniques is really strong. Like you think something's really important, but if that's the game, you make it about You're prioritizing something, and you'll notice that actually the room is unable to get things happening, and that really wasn't what was important. And so that's interesting. I think as the kind of awareness that this is quite a good way to learn, like either with your traditional style or instead of your traditional style of learning, I think we'll get more resources for coaches to be able to sort of pick up sort of pre-made games and try them, but that's not really available yet. So there's a lot of learning that coaches will need to do if they want to be able to successfully coach.
So it's more like sort of concept based, is what you're saying.
Sort of. Yeah. You can just sort of keep hearing it back, and we try not to get too caught up on language. So we just try and talk about like where people are in relation to each other more than you're doing like De La Riva or like Yeah.
That was the question I was going to actually ask you is when you start to name positions for people.
Yeah.
So, ideally, or obviously, I feel that as you start to go up through the ranks, you kind of need to know what this guard is or whatever it might be. So at some stage, we name positions, right? Like as humans, we have this fixation that we need to label fucking everything, which is a nightmare. So do you start to do that at some stage or?
No, not really. So I think I also love language. I really love language. And for a really long time, I thought it was very important that everybody had a real understanding of what we were talking about. So to keep the language the same. So it was like they were shortcuts for people to understand what we wanted them to do. But the problem with that is that I'm not sure that we want people to do exactly what we're saying. Like I think that's a wrong way to think about grappling with someone else. It's such a chaotic series of movements that we're doing. You might be doing something in the spirit of De La Riva, but it's not often going to be like crisply looking exactly as you would teach or tell someone to do it. So I suspect that there are other ways to think about jiu-jitsu and grappling that are more beneficial to us. And probably it's more about just understanding space management, controlling direction of hips, being able to isolate limbs and things from center mass so you can get really good control, and being less caught up with the language. And I'm like, if I'd spoken to Amy 6 or 7 years ago, I would have been like, oh, garbage. People have to know what you're talking about. But actually, if you have an idea of what your shape of jiu-jitsu is and what your actual goals are, which is pretty much get on top, kind of immobilize the person, peel bits away, and then submit them, then you're not going to need that big language set up around it. But it's hard to let go of as a coach, because it means you have to acknowledge you don't have all the answers for everybody, which is something else that, traditionally Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu coaches might have. You go and ask them and they'll say, oh yeah, well, so for this, we need to do this, and it will be right. Whereas actually, if you come and tell them, ask me exactly what you should be doing, we'll just try and work out where the bit is that, you're having trouble with, what's actually happening.
Yeah.
And then maybe we'll have a few games around that and see if you can work out how we can, keep that space or whatever it is that you're, what you're struggling with. So
you described it, Amy. I realise I got my blue belt and purple belt from Peter Devine, who I think actually coached in a similar way to this, because what Brent was asking, like, I actually didn't learn my jiu-jitsu in the traditional way where I don't know the names of certain positions. Even now, like as a first degree black belt, sometimes people will ask me something, blah, 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 and I just look at them blankly, like I don't actually know what that is. Or they'll even sometimes say, oh, how did you do that move? And I find it actually, I get a bit of anxiety, quite challenging sometimes to break down a position, because I've never learnt it that way. Like I just do it. So quite often my body will just do certain things without knowing how. So I've actually had the opposite. So now I've come to a gym which is perhaps a little bit more traditional and teaches with that, fundamentals, and you learn this technique, and this is ABC, this is how you do it. So I've actually come almost full circle.
The other way
like
around.
I've come the other way around. Like I learned almost by osmosis. My classes as a as a blue and a purple, they're almost like open mats. Every single class was just like, figure it out. And so I sort of had to figure out for myself, just the way that you're saying, like, okay, I've got to move my body this way. I didn't have someone saying, this is the technique, this is how you're going to execute the armbar or execute the triangle or, you know, escape the mount or whatever. But now it's strange because if I was to ever coach a class, I'm like, oh shit, wait, I got to look up the technique. I got to figure out how to do it because I don't have it I do have it in my brain, but I don't have it in the traditional way that it's been taught of like step 1, step 2, step 3. So
but maybe if you stopped and then thought, how could I create an environment that would let people work out the best way for them to do it? It can be really small. Those games don't have to be big games. Then maybe that's a way that you'd rather than feeling that you have to go look it up, that you could
100%, because when I do coach, people say to me, oh, that was fantastic, you explained it so well, because I think I know the concept better than having learnt it in that traditional, you just do it because you're told to. Like, I've learned it because I've had to figure it out for myself through, you know, like I said, almost like open mat every single time. So there's definitely benefit for it. And
that's a little bit what you're saying, Amy, right? Like, what is, to tailor onto that, Kim, like, okay, so in this position, what are you trying to do? I'm trying to close space, or I'm trying to create space. Okay, so how are you going to do that? You know, that's just one aspect of one part of a game, right? Like, talking about escaping mount, okay, well, are you trying to close space? No, they're already on top of me. So you're trying to create space. Okay, cool. Well, how do you do that? So it's a super interesting concept. And I think specifically, obviously for adults, it's really good. I think for kids, it would be fantastic, right? Like the way that kids play. And I mean, we know that kids learn through play as well. I mean, we still all the psychology that people have put into dogs, which is where a lot of animal psychology has come from, we put that into people, right? We didn't do it to become better dog trainers. We did it so that we could like manipulate human behavior. And like, you see how kids play and you're like, okay, I like that concept, you know, teaching with play and what's reinforcing for a kid. Okay, all of these sorts of things. So I think with those types of games, like, there are so many aspects and so many paths that you could go down. And I think also just trying to look from the top down, I'm trying to pass the guard. Okay, what do I need to do? Control the head. And then you watch somebody who's controlling the hips or controlling the top leg or the bottom leg, and that's all they know. And then they're like, how are you making that work? And then you're like, I would be like, no, grab the head. And they're like, no, hold the head. You know? So it's like, it's a super interesting concept as a coach looking in and then seeing different ways and paths to achieve the same goal, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And you can like encourage all of those. The thing is, I mean, you want something to be effective. So that's the other way we think about it. Is that if you see a student doing something and they're trying really hard and they are making it work, so it is an effective thing that they're doing. After they've done that for a while, we'll probably start to say, so now imagine that I'm asking you to do this for like 2 hours. Can you still make it work if you kind of step back the amount of effort you're putting in? So something to be effective, great, that's working. And then we want it to be efficient. So it's the efficiency that often will take a little bit longer for people to kind of work their way around. And that's good. I mean, I think that's great until you get to a point where you've got the laziest, oldest lady jiu-jitsu, and all I really want is like to feel really rinsed at the end of an open mat. You know that feeling where you just can't walk off the menu. So remember when you first like back in white belt, blue belt, and you're like, I've never been so tired. I feel like I've run a marathon. Whereas now I get to the end of open mat and I'm like, oh, I'm not running that sweaty because I've just been doing, my funny little old lady stuff that doesn't really cost much. That's
when I put the gis in the washing machine for myself and my purple belt husband, he's a new purple belt. His gi is drenched. He is like, and sometimes he's like, "Did you even roll? Like, look at your gi; it's not even sweaty." And I'm like, I guess I was efficient, like you said.
That's right. Just but I do look that godly
too. He's a big human. Do you have many big guys I mean, New Zealand traditionally known for bigger people. On the whole, do you have many of the 100+ in your academy?
Yeah, we've got a few. We've had actually we've lost a couple of our big guys to Australia, which is interesting. What's happening? But we've got like they do kind of all kind of slip down. Yeah, for you. They all just
Thanks.
slip down one end of the mats. I think every gym has kind of like big guy corner that they sort of end up in. But yeah, we have got quite a few big guys, and they're always so excited when they see another big guy come to the gym. I think like anyone on the outside edges of size is like, it's harder for us. We're not like the perfect 80 kg, 85 kg man in the gym who can train with everybody effectively. Those people. So
that's Brent.
So lucky. The best. That's you. You are living the dream.
Yeah.
If it wasn't for that
80
beard
kilos.
that's stopping the chokes, you'd be the perfect training partner. Get it out of the way.
I need all the defenses I can muster, Amy. So I'll take what I can get.
Fair enough. So like they were so excited. And I think like it's one thing when you're little, you're worried about getting hurt all the time, often, and feeling frustrated because things you want to do you can't make happen. But if you're a really big person and you've got sort of half a brain, you're going to be really trimming your jiu-jitsu the whole time because you don't want to be the person that's breaking someone. And I think that's harder. Yeah. I think that's actually more of a bum deal than the smaller people in the club.
Yeah, so, my husband he pretty much always pulls guard, and sometimes he gets told off. Like, why are you always just starting on the bottom? But because
like,
he's so big, nobody wants him on top of them. So he has to look after his training partners. But he realizes that he doesn't have a great top game because he can never execute it because he's always
looking after other people.
Yeah.
Yeah. So even when it's like everyone else in the gym's going, oh God, when that enormous person comes in, you've got to sort of like welcome them for the greater good.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's true. That's true.
Can you tell us about, this is a question I quite often think of with black belts. It's like, I think you got your black belt around 2019 or something. Is that right, Amy?
Yep.
Can you tell me about that day? Like, I've been lucky enough to see, I think it's 4 black belts go out now, and every time for me it's like a crazy thing to see and witness. And the black belt speech is generally something which is pretty cool, pretty funny, pretty touching, or in Sam McCarthy's case, really fast. So how was your black belt day?
I got my black belt from John Will and Jeff Grant at GSW. And the way that GSW gives out belts is that there might be a little bit of a speech from Jeff, but it's very short. And then you basically it's just you get your belt tied around your waist, and then you're kind of good to go and done. And you will usually not really get a chance to talk, which is actually quite good because I was sort of like a bit overcome. The nice thing, what I really loved about the grading that I had was that I got to grade at the same time as some really other powerful women in our club. So we had like maybe 2 brown belts given out on the same day, and I think a purple and then some blues. And that was a pretty amazing cohort of women to be with and grade with. So that was pretty exciting. What we do at workshop, which I actually really like, is we kind of do a bit of a love-in for people. So when you get your black belt, we'll open the floor and we'll tell people first that it's coming up so they know. We'll tell the family so the family has a chance to come in, because that's something I would have really liked too. I would have liked my big kids to be able to be there. So we make sure that everybody's there because we don't have like a set grading day. And then we'll open the floor and people will say things about the black belt who's just been awarded, like that have really meant a lot to them about their training journey, how they've, or they'll say really horrible things, just depending on their bed, you know. It's like somebody said, I can't believe you've made it this far, but I guess that's good, or I guess you had to get there eventually. I'm like, oh, no. But, yeah, but otherwise it's, and I think that's really nice too, having the whole community sort of chip in with the ways that you've made their life better at Jiu Jitsu, which I think is pretty nice. Yeah. So also I think that the imposter syndrome is real. So quite often I think I don't know if this is the case, if you have asked this question a lot, but I think probably most people will say they really didn't feel like they should have had their black belt when they got it. Like that might not be true for some people. Maybe if you've just won sort of black belt worlds or whatever, then or brown belt worlds, you'll be like, yeah, I mean. But otherwise, for me, I was delighted because I was really scared. As you get older and you've been brown belt, and then you're like, I'm going to get a catastrophic injury, and I'm never going to get my black belt. You know, like something's going to happen and I will never get it. So that was really nice. But it was good that it came for them. But otherwise, I think I could have been quite happy with another couple of years of, like, I just had Maud. It was not long after that camp that we were at with Letitia and Bear.
Yeah.
Such a fun camp. Oh, such a fun camp.
So Brent, Amy and I partnered. So they did similar sort of things, games where they had sort of challenges, fitness challenges. And on the last day, they did a partner challenge. And Amy and I won that challenge against the other 60 women there. So I think it was a lot of fitness stuff. So the older women came through.
I think I was just like, you do this, Kim.
It was like, you know, crazy things like sprawl. You had to just out sprawl the other women and stuff like that.
Wow.
And,
see, Kim and I knew that pretty much we weren't going to die. Whereas I think a lot of young people think they are going to die in those situations, but we knew we were going to die.
Yeah. That's what I'm talking about, that mental thing for the masters women. We know we're mentally stronger than the younger, the adults.
They're much more terrifying.
Yes, it is. It is. Yeah. And then I think the last part of the game it was first to points or something, and I had to pass Amy's guard, which I had not done until that point.
I actually had a little bit of, like, my hands got a bit itchy when you started talking about that. Wipe that sweat off. Yeah, that's right. You did.
We'll have to go again, surely. I'll either come over to New Zealand for a comp or come back here to Australia and compete. Because it's been a while.
We will. I know. It's just the reality, isn't it? Of things are quite tough for lots of people over in New Zealand at the moment, and I imagine the same in Australia. I don't know, but there's lots of people doing it really tough, and so we're just constantly in a position where we're trying to, like, help out. So if our students can't afford fees or whatever, because we had lots of layoffs and things, and so we've got people that we're saying just train. You don't have to pay. You can pay us when you're, got a job again, or so it might be a little while before we can spend up big on coming to do some training. But we would like to.
No, that'd be great. That'd be great. And what's the scene like in general in New Zealand overall? Like, how would you say? Has it grown heaps since,
I feel
last
like
5 years?
I feel like there's so many people wanting to train Jiu Jitsu and so many people wanting to get their kids in. Like, our kids' classes are closed. They're too full. We can't have any more in there. We've got to have to put some more classes in before we can fit any more on the mats. And there's lots of people training, lots of adults training. We haven't had, we're the newest school in Wellington, so we haven't had anyone kind of open up in the last 3 years, I don't think, which is something. There's some a bit further out. The competition scene is pretty sad. And I think some of that is cost. It's expensive to compete, expensive to travel. But we're really not seeing people in the higher ranks turn up for competitions. And that's pretty frustrating, but also really understand it. There are getting to be some more sort of free houses. Like, we're not affiliated under anybody here at Workshop. And all the free house gyms are really keen on being interactive. So that's really nice. So there's a kind of a really good community and lots of interaction and people supporting each other and calling each other out, which is great. Whereas I think some of the more traditional kind of slightly siloed gyms are still not really kind of interacting as much with the rest of there's still they're very still competitive about not cross-training and things like that, which is, I just find so frustrating. I mean, so frustrating. Just let your students train wherever they want to train. It's, why are we protecting? What are you protecting? There's no IP that you're protecting that somebody's going to take and become, like, unbeatable.
Yeah.
So, is there? Have you got, is that, I do.
Yeah, no, some places are still like that, but you're right. It's 2024. Like, I don't know. The internet's there. If they wanted to find out, they could find it out.
Yeah, so I find that...
To me, that's the culture of a great gym. The culture of a great gym is, to me, one of the cultures is if somebody comes in from another gym, how welcoming you are to that person. That's the way that we should be as people, it doesn't have to be this absolute tribal thing,
No, but also, like, if our students go and train at one of the other gyms in Wellington, I'm delighted because it might help break down barriers that are between the clubs, right? So that's really, really great. Maybe those gyms will feel more relaxed about their students dropping in on open mats or coming to like one class a month or, all that stuff that's not threatening. They understand that it's a conversation, not us trying to kind of soak people up. So that's really important. But also, almost invariably, it makes them really appreciate the environment that we've got here. And so that's really good for people too, because you don't know until you go and train in lots of different places. You don't know kind of what you've got. And so I really support it. I really like it when our students go and train at other places in the same city. It's fantastic. And I love it when we get visitors. I think good for everybody.
Fantastic. That's probably a good place to wind it up. Thank you so much for joining us today, Amy, and sharing.
We didn't get to talk about the menopause.
No, we'll have to save that for another time. Make Brent uncomfortable.
Yeah.
There was just going to be another lesson for me, like I was so looking forward to it.
No, I know. No. It's all right.
It sounds like you've built a really amazing environment there. And it's, if anybody is in Wellington, go check it out.
Love to see them.
They welcome drop-ins by the sound of it. And please do, let's spread that trans-Tasman love between Australia and New Zealand, because unfortunately the prices have gone up a little bit, but you're not that far away. I think it's from Melbourne to Wellington is 2 hours on a plane or something like that. It's not
2.5 hours.
Yeah, very close, very close. So
and if you've never flown into Wellington, it's it's worse than rolling with Theo, to be honest with you.
Once again, that depends. You might get that one good day, in which case it's in, but otherwise,
If it's a good day, it is the nicest journey. It is the best flight. But if it's a little bit windy, like you literally fly into Wellington over the water and you're trying to you're actually looking at the runway out of your passenger side window.
Yeah.
Until the last minute where the plane actually straightens up and then lands, you're like, oh my God, this is terrifying.
Yeah. And if you had one where everybody claps, so quite often you land in Wellington and the plane, everyone on the plane but yes, very good, well done. Good job.
It's amazing. Amy, it's been fantastic having you on. Thank you so much. You're a absolutely breath of fresh air. You're loads of fun, so obviously your gym would be the same. So if I'm ever in Wellington, 100%, I'm coming in to train.
Yes.
It's nice to be a little bit of a fly on the wall to see this reunion between the two of you.
Yeah.
Obviously, you guys really hit it off as well, so that was cool. Thanks again, Kim. Thank you, Amy, for jumping on. Just remember, everybody, please like, rate, and share the podcast. We really appreciate that. We've got our awesome T-shirts out now as well, so jump on board and order those. Again, Amy, thanks for jumping on. Kim, I'll see you at training very soon.
Yep.
And this is another episode of Roll or Die. Tell your friends. See you guys.
Bye.
See you.